everyone. I am Dhissou. I'm an artist and researcher. I'm a brown woman wearing large square glasses, a blue beanie and a blue jumper, saying growth is not linear. Today I'm here to welcome you to Culture Central's Radical Listening Week podcast. I'm your host for today, and I'm joined by Romanah Buchanan, award-winning entrepreneur, artistic director and choreographer, Dr. Hassan Hussain, writer, researcher and facilitator, and finally John Broomfield in the middle here, executive director of the Gap Arts Project in Balsall Heath. We're glad you're tuning in today to Radical Listening Week 2025. And this session is all about hearing directly from creatives and change makers across the West Midlands using insights to shape a new charter for equity. In this episode, we're diving into working conditions, what's working, what isn't, how flexible working can actually support a fairer and more sustainable cultural sector. So let's get into it. I want you to all introduce yourselves briefly with an image description, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Romanah Buchanan, CEO and Artistic Director of Eloquent Dance. I am a black woman wearing yellow, funky glasses and a green and white blazer.
Hi everyone, my name is John Bloomfield. I am an Executive Director at the Gap Arts Project. I am a mixed race man with black hair, black glasses and pretty much all black clothing today for some reason.
Hi everyone, I'm Hassan, Hussain. I'm a freelancer based in Birmingham, writer, researcher and facilitator.
And finally, I'm an artist and researcher working in a freelance capacity. I'm lucky enough to be on a funded PhD, so it feels as though the PhD is paying me to continue being an artist, which is really rare.
As it should.
As it should. I've got really interesting working conditions myself, so I thought I'd start off with this. So, as a researcher, I'm paid with a scholarship. It's a rather standard stipend, but what's really interesting through UKRI is that I get sort of 13 weeks paid sick leave per year. I get up to 6 weeks holiday. I get disability access support, so things like a mentor, a study skills tutor. I've taken on my entire supervisory team on a PTSD training course, informing them on trauma and working with trauma-based artists. It's been really mad to be in this position, but I think it's also led me to dream new conditions once I've left the research into my working life, but also in my career as an artist when working with different people as well. I thought I'd start off with that because I feel like for me it's the dream scenario, and it can be really an insight for so many other people.
How long have you been doing that?
Been about 3.5 years, coming on to 4. It's not been easy. It's been probably 2.5 years of fighting for what we need in the sector, what we need in academia. And I feel like genuinely my whole working life since I was about 20 has been fighting for something. It's kind of exhausting, and that feels like a whole job in itself. But today I wanted to kind of hold that space for that and think about my own privilege in that space, but also my own exhaustion in having to advocate for that, and move forward and dreaming about and practicing sharing some of our own experiences of working conditions and flexible working. So I don't know whether anyone wanted to kick us off and pipe in. Do you want to tell us a bit about whether you're a freelancer or whether you're a contractor? I think that would be a good place to start, just to situate ourselves.
Everyone's looking at me, so I'll try and kick it off. So I am a freelancer, like I said, based in Birmingham. Like Rue, I was doing a PhD. Well, we're still doing I have recently finished my PhD, and I also had a lot of trials and tribulations during my PhD. So for some context, my partner passed away during my PhD. Had to fight and advocate for time for myself. So then now that I've finished my PhD, moving to the arts was like a way of me kind of reclaiming agency and taking back kind of the onus of my care, and to work in a way that would kind of support and sustain my creative soul and like the bits about me that kind of gave me shine for myself. So then moving into the arts, I adopted this freelance kind of way of doing it, so then I could work project to project in a way that was sustainable to me, in a way that kind of I was in control as much as possible of kind of the projects that I do and the people that I work with and the conditions that I try and work in, although it's not always guaranteed.
Yeah, so I'm on a contract, and I'm in a peculiar position in that the organisation that I work for, the Gap Arts Project, only recently started receiving regular funding. So that meant that when I joined, and I started asking like, okay, well, it'd be good to sort of see my contract, I realised that nobody in the team actually had contracts.
Yeah.
So like top of my to-do list was to develop contracts for the whole team, and it's kind of great to be able to just do that from from the beginning, and to sort of cherry pick from different kind of contracts from peer organisations, and to think about what might work for us. I would say that we haven't really introduced anything too radical right now. There was really just like felt like we needed to make
get
sure
the baseline in.
get a baseline, and just but it's also been part of having conversations around like toil, annual leave, sick leave, and that's been a cultural shift for an organisation who've have had that for a couple of years, but for years and years and years before that, were built on just people just working really, really hard, blood, sweat and tears, and not being able to, not having access to that, and then when having it, not really feeling like they could avail themselves of those of those rights. And then the other thing I'll just say is that I'm a big advocate for flexible working. It's changed my life. A few years ago, my partner and I were able to move to Birmingham during the pandemic, and that was enabled by flexible working. So I had this commute between Birmingham and Cambridgeshire, and now we've got a two-year-old son, and it really kind of helps with that. So I work compressed hours, doing 5 days in 4 days, and I have a day for childcare, and also kind of flexibility to support with like nursery pickups and that kind of thing as and when needed.
That's massive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like for all the parents that are listening, like just having, or parents or anyone with caring responsibilities, full stop, having like flexible working is an absolute game changer. And it shouldn't be something that we should have to like advocate for. It should just be a
standard.
Yeah.
Almost like when you join a company, like, what are my working conditions? Like, do I have childcare? Do I have caring responsibilities? And then from there on, then they open up a space and a conversation.
Absolutely, yeah.
What about yourself, Romanah? I know you're a director. What's it like being a...
Yeah, kind of write my own contract. But feel like there's a little bit of like freelance in there as well. I still get to freelance and do some bits outside of working within my organisation, but then similar to John, like have to think about the contracts of other people as well, and how they're working with us, because we employ a lot of freelancers. So yeah.
Cool. So based on like all of your different positions, the first question I wanted to ask was, you mentioned a bit about flexible working conditions, John, but what if flexible working conditions became a sector-wide standard, not a special request? And I want to add something to this, but sector-wide guaranteed practice, not just something that we add on as a special request. What do you all think? Could we like adopt flexi working models? What have we learnt from other people in like job shares or like part-time roles? What have we learnt from other freelancers? You mentioned something about having freelancers in your company.
Yeah, a variety of. So we employ probably just over 17 freelancers to help with our various different projects, and they make up a very heavy line of our expenditure, to be fair. We spend a lot of money on freelancers, but our organisation has grown off the strength of those freelancers. I think when we often think freelance, we think as and when, project to project, but they are a very stable part of our structure. Like, we wouldn't be able to do what we do without them. So like on the flip side to that, it's thinking about giving them stability in work as well. Rather than it being a project-to-project thing, they know they've got stability in working at Eloquent, that they're going to have consistent work. And we've seen that in some of the freelancers staying with us over like a decade now.
I don't think I've ever heard consistency and freelance in the same sentence.
Yeah.
I'm
before.
going to come knocking at the door. I'm like,
Yeah, I think they're in quite a privileged position, actually.
Yeah.
That,
And it shouldn't be privilege.
it shouldn't be,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think in our like industry, it's seen as that because it can be so like, there's work one day, then there's not, as you were mentioning before, Hassan. So yeah.
What about you, Hassan?
I think to kind of have this generalised practice like across the board as a freelancer would be really interesting, because it's almost as if then the people or the organisations that are like salaried kind of having the same kind of flexible model or like part-time kind of contracts. There's kind of like a shared understanding between how freelancers operate and how salaried or like permanent contracted members of organisations operate. And as well as that, I think a lot of the time like especially in the art sector, everyone kind of has their own practice. So I think being able to work in a kind of organisation like you both do, then if we have this kind of model, you both will then have time to like either work on like individual things like for your own practices, or to like spend more time with your families. I think that's also really important. And I think adopting this kind of, was the word guaranteed to have this like guaranteed to have this guaranteed kind of structure, I think would allow for a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I broadly agree, although I think there's a hierarchy. So I think with although very different conditions for freelancers and salaried team members, and I think for salaried team members we should absolutely be thinking about flexible working as a guarantee. Could be thinking about what it can enable for caring responsibilities, what it can enable just to kind of enrich an employee's or team member's life when they've got time they can spend on their own practice or other projects, or working for other organisations. So we could be looking at like four day working weeks and so on.
Yeah.
But then I also think there's a huge bit of work to be done in extending the protections and rights that contracted team members have, and extending those to the freelancers who the whole sector relies on. So like pretty much all of the artists in our sector are freelancers, and things are structured as if freelancers are a sort of like this like extra thing that you have to negotiate with sometimes, and it's like none of us, no one would have salaried jobs in the arts if it wasn't for freelance artists and all freelance art workers. So we need to look after freelancers. We should be thinking about ways of extending those rights in different ways.
Especially within the public sector.
Yeah.
I think that's like one of the main things that I find as a challenge in the arts, is that you do have a private and a public sector. So in the public sector, the freelancers are more precarious, but in a private sector where it's like commercially driven, less so, right? So I kind of wanted to look at like contracts. I mean, John, you said that as contracted employees, we should be aiming higher, but then even more so for freelancers. What do you think that the guaranteed clarity should be in a contract? So is it like dates, times? What are we looking for? What do you think?
I think it's slightly different kinds of contracts there, but I think really contracts shouldn't be something to be scared of. It's just, a lot of contracts can be quite impenetrable because they end up being written by like a HR advisor like 15 years ago, and people are just adding things and tweaking things.
Appendix A.
Yeah, and it makes them really, really, really difficult. And like in very basic terms, a contract is just somewhere where you just list, it's just like your one resource for just having everything kind of written down that could be for a freelancer, project start date, end date, budget, how the budget works, how the production budget works, what the procedure is to like sign off a payment. You just have all of that in one place, ideally. For a salaried team member, it should just have. A contract should work in tandem with a handbook that kind of talks more about how things work in an organisation, like how you. So, like a contract would say that an employee has a right to take time off in lieu. A handbook should explain how you.
So it builds that flexibility.
How you process
into
that.
it.
But yeah, it's just having kind of almost like you can think of it as a structure for a conversation. So it's just going through and saying this is what the pay is, these are when the dates are, and it's all written down. But there's room to negotiate there. But if you don't have that kind of structure, then things are left unsaid, and things are kind of or they get lost in a million different emails, or something verbal that maybe one person in the team said something to a freelancer and the director said something else, and it just creates
get really messy.
Creates all that confusion. So
have you got an example of like best practice of that, John? Like of the different organisations you've worked at, like what's been the gold standard that you've seen?
I would say the best contracts I've ever seen have always been the one, that I've personally seen have been ones where they're almost like written from scratch.
Right.
Because so actually you don't really need a lawyer to do a lot of these contracts, because it's just like lawyers don't work on commissions, it's just.
I've never heard about lawyers in art. Sorry.
Yeah, it's like none of us can afford lawyers. Like, let's just forget the lawyers. It's just sitting down together and just going, when is this going to start? When does it end? What are the deadlines? How does this work? What support will you have? And just having a structure for a conversation, so it doesn't feel like a freelancer is having to having to just ask for everything and having to talk about access at the same time as their fee, at the same time as the creative parameters of a contract. It's just that everything has a sort of step, and there's going to be a little bit of negotiation with everything, or just finding out how somebody wants to work. Like every creative relationship I've ever had as a curator of an artist has been different.
Right.
A huge part of my job has always been just working out how am I going to work with you. What do you want me to do? What's like how is this going to work? And just having a structure to kind of like speed that up so you can.
And is that like a convo to talk through the contract? Because I know a lot of the time we just send it, and then there's like a, have you received it? Can you sign it and send it back?
I think ideally, I mean, it would be like in theory, just signing it and sending it back is like wild. It's like, well, then you're just
agreeing to everything that's set up by them.
Yeah, it's like, I'm just gonna, as a freelancer, you're gonna work in the exact same way that the person before you did.
Right.
Like you wouldn't, like.
So you think
every
that conversation
freelancer's different, and every like you said, Hassan, every artist that comes to a different workplace needs different conditions to create. But also every individual is different. Everyone's access is different. Everyone's care needs are going to be different. I really liked what you said earlier when you said contracts are sexy.
Yeah, there's nothing I love more than like a clear, succinct, sexy contract, and and it's. Like everything's clear, everything's there that you need. You've kind of had a conversation about it before.
Yeah.
The kind of one person that has like done it the best for me so far is someone called Amanda Fawcett, who's based in Bristol, and shout out to Amanda Fawcett Productions. And I'm currently working on a project with them in Bristol Old Vic right now. And like what I loved the most was like we had this chat and it was like, what do you need, what do you want, which is really nice because as I was saying earlier, like negotiation's kind of like a thing that is drilled into me as a freelancer and a way for me to advocate for my own care. And a lot of the times it can be stressful or like nerve-wracking to like know that I'm going to bring up these things that I need to talk about and that I need to embed into the contract or embed into the kind of practice of my working conditions with this organisation. Whereas with Amanda, it was like a conversation beforehand. We spoke about it. I then saw it reflected in the contract, and then at the top of the contract, on the very first page, was a kind of like snapshot, like here are all the important bits.
Right.
So then, like, I didn't need to scroll and like go through all the jargon, like all the stuff like start dates, deadlines, pay, fee, all that stuff.
Good.
Who to invoice to, the address, everything at the top. And I was like, oh, like I'd have to just
So
like
easy.
put this thing, and I haven't got like I've been had to go to the bottom to sign it, of course. But like everything that was needed was there right at the top, and like bits were like highlighted, and everything was just great. So more of that, please. In the
Yeah,
sector.
there's a really good template actually made by Jackie Tan from Fact Liverpool, who kind of created a really good template for contracts and has left it out open source, so we'll link that in. But it essentially has like dates, how much you're being paid, when the project's over,
really
like
clear.
basic responsibilities, and then it kind of goes through. There's a section where it's like what we expect from you, what do you expect from us, what you can expect from us. I've never seen that, like it's a reciprocal contract. And then it really accessibly kind of like deals with like terms like force majeure and all that kind of stuff as well. So I've seen that be like a really good example. I guess I started to think like about my life from like being a contracted employee to a freelancer. I feel like one gallery I worked for had right at the start had kind of declared having a disability and then never saw that document ever again. It was just kind of filed away. And so when the disability arose to the surface and I asked for my needs to be met, they were kind of like, well, we didn't know you were disabled. It's like, I definitely signed a piece of paper. Sometimes,
Where you put it, I don't know.
yeah, sometimes that paperwork just sort of gets like filed away,
Yeah.
shuffled to the side and not really thought about again. And then when you need it, it's there. And it kind of like supports you in that process. So I was really able to kind of like advocate myself. Annoyingly, I had to bring up the 9 protected characteristics and Equality Law Act 2010 to be like, you know, you ask politely the first time, you ask politely the second time, and then the third time I'm having to quote employment law.
Yeah.
That wasn't fun. But I feel like as a freelancer, am I entitled to do that anymore? Like, galleries and production companies that I work for, am I still protected by those laws? Those are things that I'm constantly questioning. I can slide in an access rider, I can have conversations about access. I always kind of like do it tentatively. I'm like, I need to know the organisation before I slide in an access rider. Some people throw it in straight away. Some people I'm like, access details available upon signing a contract, because I'm like, I want to test the waters first. I think it's like up to organisations to make that conversation easy to have, right?
Definitely.
I mean, we talked a bit about access riders earlier and how that's really helped because it's created a bit of a standard. So there's a website, Access Docs for Artists, developed by Lizzie Rose, Leah Clements and Alice Hattrick, that just gives a bit of a guide for how freelancers can, or anyone really can sort of have a conversation about their access needs with an organisation. But there could be, I was just thinking then about how so much of the like wider conversation about working conditions has to kind of come, like there's a feeling that it has to come from the organisation, and they're the ones that kind of ask, and if you raise it as a freelancer, you're kind of the troublemaker. Something that could be useful could be a standardised set of questions that a freelancer can ask an organisation, where it doesn't feel like this is something that, you know, I'm being a troublemaker and I'm asking for this, but it's like, oh, let's just work through these sort of 5 questions.
That's the point where like tick boxes can become really useful.
Yeah. and I think like if it becomes standard practice, it kind of takes the fear away of being a troublemaker and thinking, is bringing up these things going to cost me the contract? And you said, John, you said something really nice before about kind of standardising this as like an onboarding process, and like knowing that there's going to be like this like specified time or this slot where you can like sit with the person that you're going to be working with or going to be employing you or contracting you, and kind of going through these things, and that's a space for like knowing that you've got this like carved out space that's kind of standard practice. Like, I think that was really cool.
And I think if that doesn't come from, you know, if that's not going to come from organisations, then maybe it has to come from freelancers. Like, why are freelancers waiting? You know, why do freelancers have to wait for organisations to ask the question and to send a contract?
Yeah,
you could
absolutely.
kind of send them your own contract.
Exactly.
Oh, I love that.
It's kind of a dreamy
This is what I
space
need.
to be in, right?
Yeah.
I always see my access rider as a form of contract. I'm like going to work with an organisation, and these are my non-negotiables, and these are the things that I'm willing to have a chat about. What can you do? I understand, like, having worked on both sides in art spaces for institutions and then being a freelancer, that, you know, budgets are tight. The arts are going through a rapid crisis at the minute, which is kind of like really affecting finances. And at the end of the day, I mean, I know that there's more security for people working in the arts as a contracted employee, but they're also in a precarious situations, less so. And so you kind of have that empathy and that kind of like reciprocity of understanding that they're also, but when there's transparency and when organisations are open to having that conversation with you and explaining what their kind of like parameters are, then you can sort of creatively explore options. You can say, well, you've got a video team in your gallery, why don't we just do that bit for free, or why don't you help me document such and such, or every meeting we have, we do it on Teams. I can't have an access support worker to take notes, can you just record it so I've got it? Like, there's so many we're all artists, we're creatives, we've got the ability to like think of ways and new strategies together, and that's what's really exciting, really. I don't know, I get a kick out of that.
What excites me is how like AI can help that as well. Like, we don't always have to be thinking strenuously on how we, like, in our own like human limitations can fix some of these access needs. Like, AI is a great tool for like stepping in now. So
Yeah, I find like a lot of my friends in academia have got like ADHD and stuff. The university have like written a policy for AI. I mean, it has its like climate implications. I've got to like put that out there, but you know, using it as a tool not to generate work, but to help structure, to help like build things into practice, to help like keep tabs on things as a tool to kind of support individuals.
Good.
I think just kind of like bouncing off that last point around like stability and ways that access is built in and not something that's thought about last minute. It's really important. Like, if we're having those conversations right at the beginning, then we can kind of like creatively work together to see how we might move forward, but also how that might affect the way that they continue to contract artists and creatives, the way they might think about their own access as a team. I did a project at Nottingham Primary, shout out to Primary, and it was like an artist-led project, so it was led by me, and I was like, I mean, it had its like cons because I felt like I was a producer and artist, so many roles, but they really trusted me to come into the space and take what I wanted from it. And one of the things was I had a project budget of around 30k and an access budget of around 30k, but from the way in which I generated the access and thought about all of the participants in the work, all of the other creatives, how they get there, what their childcare needs are, whether they need access, whether they needed therapy, like everyone got a guaranteed care package, very much inspired by Eastside projects, and everyone got like fees and everything, but the way that we'd thought about like how people were taken care of, or like how much care a facilitator needed, really impacted the gallery. So after we'd finished the project and sort of started to wrap up, the gallery started to think about their own like curators and cultural workers and what kind of access they needed. So it was really nice to see that as a creative I'd had a massive impact on the organisation, and then people like rewrote contracts. People had like regular meetings that were just for wellbeing. So I requested that every 2 weeks we would check in just to see how everyone was doing, away from deadlines, away from checking the project finance, away from thinking about like what's next or artist development. It was just like, guys, let's just see how everyone is, because it's so easy to get burnt out in this industry. They kept that on as a practice. I think that's really inspiring.
And did you ever access support worker?
I did. I had an access support worker and admin support. I should have had a producer too.
Yeah. And marketing.
You learn.
And so many other things, yeah, that's
exactly.
I'll never forget the importance of a check-in, and it was the first time I think someone ever checked in kind of a creative space was in 2015 or 16, and I was working on a show with Anna Hamali Howard, and we kind of all came in and we just all sat down in the circle, and like no one's ever done a check-in before, and I remember Anna just being like, how are we all arriving? And it was so simple, but like checking in and then like also checking out. I'll just and I always say it to Anna, I was like, Anna, I'll never forget like the first check-in that I ever had, and like like now like in my own practice and in like my own workshops and my own kind of projects, I always make sure that there's like a check-in, there's a check-out, and there's like regular kind of check-ins throughout, and it's something as simple as like sitting on the floor with my legs crossed with one of my friends, like just checking in.
Yeah.
And it's crazy.
Because we're all carrying so much. It's difficult work. We've all got other kinds of like life going on. And it's so easy to just get wrapped up into kind of like project outcomes. I mean, I'm really interested in process over product. So like the in-between, that relationality that you build with a space and that you build with other creatives, it's like really important to my practice. But I feel like it should be another one of those standards, right? Another one of those things that we see as something like really important, to just check in with your colleagues, to check in with your peers, and things arise, and that informality and that flexibility is what allows people the opportunity to then bring up what's actually going on. And it might be that an access change that's happened in the middle of a contract, you've got the time then to air that and to have that space to kind of bring it up. Okay, 1 second. iPad closed. By the way, full disclosure for the audience, we already did this by accident. The conversation was flowing, but I promise you're not missing out on anything. So when we refer back to what we said earlier, that was that. I was thinking a lot about kind of care and responsibilities for individuals. Like, we all have very different lifestyles. I care for a cat. No, I'm joking. My partner cares for me. It's part of our kind of like holistic relationship. We come a lot into conflict with certain spaces because he's my husband. People assume that he should just be doing that all the time anyway. But he's got a job. He's got a PhD. He's got stuff that he has to earn a salary for us to be able to work, to live rather. So I'm constantly negotiating space with different kinds of contractors for him to be paid to accompany me into space, because so my access need relies on having a really strong interpersonal connection with someone. Some people are just like, oh, but it's your husband, like, so it's that like professionalism that's kind of like pushed into disability and access.
I think that's very common. That
so
a lot
common.
of people's support worker is a friend or a partner, and I think it's really good to talk about that. And I think a lot of people who are beginning to think about their own access needs and the support that they might be able to avail themselves of don't always know what options there are. They think that, okay, support worker, I don't know, that's like some person that's going to come into my space, I have to employ. They don't know about, maybe they don't know about my practice, about my life, and just knowing that it can be, often it's sort of formalising an existing relationship and just paying somebody so they can dedicate a bit more time to that care and support. I think,
like, in our industry, carers receive the least, like, or people who have dependents or responsibilities around care receive the least kind of like attention almost. I know at our institution we've had to advocate for carers' rights, and we've managed to affect some policy at the moment, so we're really happy about that and celebrating, but the work doesn't stop there. And it's also like, me and my partner often think about when we've left university, who's going to keep advocating? Like, who then continues that work? Who picks up the baton? Who knows we've done that work? Who knows they have that right? So sometimes I think about like policy being really like transparent. to know. You spoke earlier as well, John, about contracts having like all of the processes outlined in sort of one document, so people really know what their rights are. I think that's really important. And I kind of wanted to kind of launch off that in terms of my own access. So at university, I spoke earlier about having an access mentor called support worker, and then I've got study skills support as well. So it's very clear the distinction between both of them. My access mentor does stuff around like motivation, to keep me motivated, to check in with my mood, check-ins, and making sure that I'm like mentally well and okay. And then my study skills tutor is like helping me check in on like deadlines. Sometimes I speak things out to her, she'll type them up. You know, I've not always got the ability to kind of put into writing what I'm trying to think about, so it's really helpful. And I've found that like a really creative process as well, like really generative. When I'm talking to my mentor or my study skills tutor, I'm getting like ideas from them, they're getting ideas from me, passing on that work, and it's actually a really creative and fun process. Do any of you have like experiences of being
So I've been on like the other side of that. So I was an access support worker for a friend, which like feeds into what you said earlier about like having like a connection and like a pre-existing relationship with someone that you're like working with in like a care setting. And I was kind of like a mixture of the two, like both the kind of study skills but also like the like check-in person. And whilst doing whilst being my friend's access support worker, they were doing a master's, and a lot of the time it like would be in like the Zoom together, and like I'll be there with, like my mic up, but we'll be in the same room, and then we're like I'm like doing notes and like writing stuff, and like we're kind of batting ideas like to and fro, and it was very, I didn't expect it to be as creative as it was, and I really enjoyed it because even though I was there to support them, I also like learned so much and got so much, and found it enriching for my own creativity, and it taught me so much about my own like need, like access needs, and like support that I need whilst looking after or like being there for someone else in like an access support capacity. So that was really important, and really like the only one I can think of is life changing, but that's like, it feels a bit too dramatic to say that, but like it was just very like it like altered so much of the way that my mind works and the way that I now approach like care, support, and like think about access.
I think that's the thing, like seeing when people are asking for their needs to be met, not as an obstacle or a complexity or a problem, but as an opportunity. Sound like corporate speak. Make the problem an opportunity.
I think it's really good to share these examples. Sorry, I think it's really good to share these examples of how access can work, and kind of the support that other people have used, just to give a bit of a database of like, well, these are things that might work for you, because I've sort of I've helped people do access to work applications, and they've maybe just figured out what their access needs are, and then just like it's such a big step to think, well, how do we meet these? And yeah, as I said earlier, sometimes you just think a support worker, that's just someone that comes from, you know, like central casting. You don't know who they are, they just turn up, and it's just like a stranger that's coming into your life, and doesn't have to work in that way. It can be, you know, just there's so many really sort of hyper specific ways that support can sort of, you know, can be life changing, and just sort of, I think it's really empowering to kind of share the examples.
I don't think we see enough of the examples.
Exactly.
I think that a lot of people don't know what their rights are as a period. They don't know what their rights are, but then equally they don't know the creativity in which access can be given. Something as simple as like, I don't know, so with my arthritis I can't drive a lot of the time. If I do long journeys I really struggle, and so my partner drives me, but then that is his access kind of like thing. Sometimes it's more like obvious, sometimes it's less obvious, what kind of like roles people are performing, but just having that person that like really cares about me as a trusted person, having him in all this space, just seeing his face that like across the other side of the room, it sounds really cheesy, but but it's true, it's enough, like because you know that if anything happened, you've got that person to turn to. And actually, it's a really cheeky way of offloading care from an institution. I'm just putting that out there, not that they shouldn't be doing that care work, but like knowing that my partner is there and my care worker is there, I'd be more likely to solve a problem with him or not even have a problem just because he's there, than going to someone who's contracted me or going to a curator and explaining something that I'm going through, maybe for the first time ever, and opening up that space. That can be like really difficult, but equally they might not know what to do. And they might not know how to like work in that situation, and it takes the pressure off them because they're also like other human beings in this same difficult system that is the arts, and it's only difficult because of finances.
I mean, to that I would say that for a lot of funding streams, rightly access is kind of calculated separately. So say if you put in an Arts Council project grant, your project budget would be like, 15k just for example, but your access budget would be separate, and that wouldn't impact on the whether the application will be successful or not. So it's not like that's just raising the production budget because you have somebody there to sort of drive you and provide that care. So it really is sort of, I think it's beneficial on both sides and probably like underused on both sides. I think there's a lack of understanding, or a lack, maybe it's there's a bit of a, it's just something that people don't talk about enough through kind of shame or lack of knowledge, lack of experience, but it could benefit the whole sector.
Absolutely. I mean, Romanah, like, I'm not sure what it's like in like the dance or performing arts, but where have you seen like access really strongly implemented, or how has it affected you and your running your organisation?
I think for us, when I think about access, I'm thinking about when we first renovated our studio space on like a shoestring budget, because we did it ourselves. We turned a sofa shop into a dance studio.
A sofa shop?
Yeah.
Yes.
And it wasn't very accessible. Like the entrance to the building, the toilets, etc. And it was really bothering us. Obviously there was little that we could do because we were on this tight budget. So in our like long-term thinking, we were like, okay, we need to think about the proper renovation of this space, and access being at the forefront of that. Like, how accessible are our toilets? How accessible is the entrance to the building? We had a stairs part. Can people access our first floor? What are we putting on first floor? So we then went for some renovations for grant from Social Investment Business, was successfully awarded a 6-figure grant, and have just completed the renovation of our art centre, and it's now fully accessible. So for us, it's not just talking about access, it's actually like doing the doing. So once we've spoken about it, what's the plan, put it into action, and now we're able to welcome everyone to our space.
It's a really tangible outcome as well.
Yeah, 100%. And for me, that's really fulfilling.
I can imagine. I think as well, like, there's something really to be said around like access and caring responsibilities, but also of like parenthood, and like being a mother or a father or a parent or guardian to young folk. Like, I remember one of my friends worked at university as an academic teacher, and his partner has like a really high up job in the NHS. So he was the primary carer, he was the parent. I feel like we've still got a long way on like policy in terms of what's lawful, but equally organisations could be like leading the way forward in thinking about how they define their own policies. So like we were dreaming and imagining, but basically he wasn't allowed, like his paternity leave was 2 weeks. And he's the primary parent, right? So he's the one providing all of the childcare while his partner's like out working, and he wasn't allowed like time off for like taking his child to like hospital appointments or like healthcare appointments. It was just a case of oh, well, it's unpaid leave. And I think, like, in that scenario, like, my first thing to go to was just, like, that could have been such a beautiful way to, like, really change legal policy in the UK, when we've got, like, more examples of this, like, kind of, like, really what should be, like, standard practice if we're going to change, like, equality gaps and stuff.
It's, like, terribly wrong from the jump, from
And
like
it's
from the
sexist,
government
like, the
jump.
woman needs to, she wants to work,
But
like,
even if it was the woman, like, there's still, you'll know, like, just to survive on maternity leave, you can't survive on statutory maternity leave.
no, exactly.
You literally just can't. Like, it just about pays for you to have a drink of water. Like, from the jump, the government have got it so ridiculously wrong. So then for organisations that are thinking about that, what's the best practice for them? If you're not working in private sector and you are in the public sector where funding's already, like, everyone's scrapping for the little £2. If we're already at that place, then what is best practice? It's really, I love that we're having this conversation because it's really important. And for so many, like, friends that I've got in the industry, mums or dads, that are trying to do the whole parenthood thing and then trying to actually work and make a living. Sometimes you're like, I might just have to sit at home and put my feet up because there's literally, like,
And I'm not
no support.
trying to take up space here or anything, but, like, I feel like a lot of my, like, trans siblings and stuff, a lot of my non-binary siblings, like, I'm thinking about them, and when they're in their childcare journey, like, where is the policy for them? Do you know what I mean? We're in, like, really horrible times at the moment, and, like, the creative institutions could be really pushing a path forward, but we're still, like, working on shoestrings, and our imaginations are still tiny.
It's difficult to forge a path forward when we're just trying to cover the basics, you know? Like, I think it's hard to trailblaze, but it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be done.
I've seen organisations trailblaze.
Yeah.
It does happen, but I do and absolutely have empathy for everyone who is working on a tight budget.
Yeah.
I mean, not all of these changes need money. Like, I always think that access, it's about often it is money, but it's a combination of, like, providing support. Could be budget, it could be time. Time is so important, just, like, not rushing things, spreading things out, and planning, and then it's attitude. And actually, if the budgets are not available, you can do so much with attitudes and with time. And organisations should really be thinking about that. So with most organisations have been at standstill funding for years, and with inflation, that means, like, it's just like a drop in kind of real wages across the sector. So there's, like, just thinking about, say, for example, like, staff retention, quality of life of your team and freelancers. There's a real area to kind of work in there around providing greater flexibility. So, like, can't give kind of pay rises, but you can look at. You see more organisations now looking at introducing, like, a 4-day week, or kind of
a 4-day week.
You do 4 days, yeah, or kind of greater flexibility, and that's a way to sort of look after. That's one way you can look after your team. If you can't give those kind of pay rises that should be there, you can think about how can you improve quality of life of your team.
Do you guys have flexible working at Gap?
Yeah, we have flexible working, and we're beginning to think about what a 4-day week might look like. And that's something that, I really want to think about, because we're a small team, but everyone in the team's either got caring responsibilities or a practice that they do outside of their work at the Gap. And we've got an amazing team. I don't want anyone there to think that they need to move on to, or they need to make a decision between their work at the Gap and their own practice or whatever else they've got going on in their lives. Like, if they want to do that, great. But I don't want to. Yeah, if we can keep that team, that's what I want, really.
Yeah.
I think there's something really to be said as well for these caring responsibilities that we either have for children, for partners, for loved ones, for ourselves and our own mental health. And, like, I don't know, but, like, we could probably amongst us list a bunch of skills that we've acquired through our own life situations. I feel like a lot of the time job descriptions or creative opportunities are based off certificate and merit and experience. What if they were based off more holistic things? Like, tell me a time that you've practiced some care. Tell me about a time where you've, you know, really held out for a loved one. Tell me about a time where you've had to think about your own care needs and how you've advocated for them. Because you'd be like when you were talking about the things that you've done and fought for at the university, like, I can think of so many jobs that you would automatically slide into for all of that holistic life experience.
What's really interesting is, do you know how organizations or places have their values, or these are the things that we are really attuned to. When I was,
can also hold them to account on this.
Yeah, but a positive thing. An organisation that did this well for me was Fierce Festival. So one of their things is care is one of their value. Is the right word value? Yeah, one of their values. Yeah, I think it was joy, rigor, trust, care.
Yeah, those would be their values.
Off the top of my head, they're the ones. I think I remember them all actually. So when I
joy is a value.
Yeah, honestly. So when I was kind of shifting from academia to the art sector, seeing these values on their website and applying for a position with them, for a project, it was the values that actually drew me to them. But then a lot of the times these values are performative. People just say this because it's the right thing to say, but then in my interview questions, we spoke about the values, and it was a time, for example, where these holistic things and my experiences in caring for myself, post-grief or during grief, in prioritising joy and putting things what are important to me. These are all things that I believe were seen as positive, because then I was lucky enough to kind of get the position and have a fruitful relationship with Fierce to this day. So that's one example of where it has happened. But I would say that the majority of cases, a lot of the times those things aren't weighted enough. It in regard to experience, for example, and working experience. But then sometimes you might not have had as much working experience because you've had to have life experience.
We need to take in account of all of these things. I was on an interview panel for Disability Arts Shropshire, and we had a couple of black folks apply for the role in the director's role, but they didn't have that on their experience. But we were is that because of the way that statistics might be charged against these black women? And have they not been in that role because of bias in employment? But can they do it? Probably better than a lot of people.
Yeah.
So those are the things that we were interviewing for. We were getting to know the people rather than thinking about what's on a CV. And I think it's really important to think about that instead of the skills gap, what are the kind of other attributes we're looking for, what can be presented as value to an organisation. But equally thinking about people in employment, do you think it's their job to kind of to I don't know, work themselves into the ground to prove that they're valuable? I constantly see so many of my friends and colleagues being burnt out because they've got to do X, Y, and Z, and because the arts are suffering, they've got to be the individual to fill that gap. I just think what would happen if we made a little bit less effort? Yeah. I don't know if that's not a trick question. I'm just genuinely curious.
I mean, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
I've worked in some intense work environments. I've seen people just sacrifice, all of their kind of personal life, their mental health for work and for burnout and for good causes. But you do that, and it doesn't. You've just got to do it all over again, and you can't, and it kind of doesn't change.
Sets a precedent. We need to move away from the grind set.
Exactly. The work, the work we do, it's valuable. It's enjoyable. It can be it can be joyful, but we're not like brain surgeons. Like I think if we, I think just having a sense of that is important. There's
the brain surgeons get to switch off and go home.
I think with the new generation though, hustle culture's dying because the new generation are going, soft life, please.
Yes.
Like,
Bare
soft
minimum.
life, I beg. These Gen Zs are not doing hustle culture like how we used to. They're like, no, thank you.
We've heard about the Thatcherism years, you know.
Yeah, and actually, they're trailblazing a new path, like, that's got mental health.
Radical rest.
Yeah, well-being at the forefront of work, like, rather than it being hustle culture, we're going to wake up at 6 a.m, we're going to go to sleep at 11, we're going to work. Actually, no, like, if you rest hard, it enables you to work better.
Yeah, and like as a millennial, that's one thing from the Gen Z that I have like I've adopted. I'm like, yeah, like
absolutely.
And I remember seeing a TikTok, and one thing that like I've learned that's really important is, I think it was Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen said, no is a full sentence.
I
Oh my
love
god,
that, yeah.
one of my favourite books, Martin Herbert, Tell Them I Said No.
See,
Best book.
Powerful, and like it's giving Gen Z, and like as a millennial, like I'm assimilating into that because I just love, like, I just want a soft life. I want to just do like I want to do all these cool creative things, but then also as a freelancer, a lot of my work has its own labour because it's like it's very like close to me, or like I'm very personally connected to it. And then it's like there's that labour as well as the actual labour of doing the thing.
But as queer folk, as people of colour, you know, you bring so much. As disabled folk, you bring so much of your personal self into that work, on top of all of the responsibilities and the kind of like social implications of being in the art world. It is like a full body marathon. And it's like, what are we doing to re-energise each other? Should workplaces be putting in like, you know, a week off for like mental health repair? Like, could that be a thing? Could that be like, if we're learning from people with access needs and care responsibilities who are pouring back into their families and themselves, how do we like make that another kind of guaranteed standard?
And then also as a freelancer, that softness that I like need and want, I know that comes at a cost because there's a financial like thing to that. Like at that softness, when I have like a soft Monday, or like I think I need 1 day a week where I'm not doing anything, that comes with knowing that I'm not going to get paid to do it. But then for me as an individual, and like, I realise that it's quite a privilege for me to be able to say this, is that like I would rather have less money and prioritise my own
better
health.
Yeah, for sure.
I've got pals who have to work less but would like to work more, just because of like government stipulations on their benefits. So, for example, a couple of my disabled friends who get PIP are only allowed to work a certain amount, otherwise they risk losing their benefits, and they've like worked really hard or had to like go through court case to prove that those are things that they need, and then risk losing them if they take on a bit of extra work. It's kind of like we're living in a society where everything's punitive and judged and checked and CCTV monitored, and like, you know, you have one off day and everyone's like pouncing on you.
Well, that's who needs to pick up the labour, is the people, the government that are trying to change PIP. Like, you need to do the work, and you need to realise that what you're trying to change and do is not sustainable, and it's not logical. It's just I can talk for. I'm not
and
gonna.
PIP and access to work are to enable people to be at work. They're not trying to like take time or get money or sit on their ass. They want to be in work. They enjoy creating, they enjoy making, they enjoy being at work. These are the things they need to get them there.
And I imagine these policies are all written, and the kind of checklist is written by I imagine able-bodied people. It's like, have conversations with like disabled people, have conversations with people that are benefiting and like need PIP. Like, have those conversations. Don't. I just feel
It's a case for the arts as well, like, because a lot of people making the decisions on ACE boards and stuff aren't actually in the arts. But we are, like, what can we do as people who have lived experience of all of this and are in the arts?
Interestingly, I joined Midlands Area Arts Council board this year, and just because of that reason, like, instead of being like, okay, there was a couple of things happening just personally and professionally, and I was like, actually, I want to influence change on a different scale. And I think once being in that space now, you kind of realise how much other people are feeling the same and are actually able to influence change from the ground up. They're on the ground doing the work and now able to bring that and hopefully let it transcend through to policy. So, yeah, it's important to have people that are doing the doing, then making the decisions.
So, based on everything, I think I'm going to ask one final question. And this is when we put our creative brains and our kind of like dream-like imaginations to work and think about what a co-created working conditions could look like. Like, I want us to like dream big now. Like, think about all of the different things that we need in working conditions and flexible conditions. What are like all of the things that can become part of that like guaranteed standard? For me, it's always paying an access support worker, because if access to work is going to like cease to exist, I need my partner to be able to earn money whilst taking time out of work to look after me.
For me, it's flexible working. Definitely as a mum of two, that's also got like big career ambitions. Being able to have flexible working is massive. So yeah, I'd say that.
For me, it would be rights and protections for freelancers and artists. Get artists and freelancers on the national portfolio. Like if you can have organisations be part of it and have
cool.
Have regular funding for 3-4 years, why can't you have artists?
Yeah,
have like be paid for 3 to 4 years on a contract.
Yeah.
Dreaming.
Yeah. I would like that.
Me please.
And also I think like making it kind of standard practice to have like sick pay or like paid leave in freelance contracts. Just like standard practice, because over the course of a project, like anything can happen.
I want every NPO that gets NPO funding to sign a contract to say that every freelancer they're going to work with, they are paid the Artists Union England cost, which is £350 for 5 years of working in the arts per day. I also want back massages when I'm doing heavy artwork.
Yeah.
I want leave for dads, maternity leave, paternity leave. I want
free therapy for
like
certain projects that require
bringing your whole self. Yeah.
I
want radical love to be on the agenda. And radical rest.
Contracts of care.
Radical rest, I like that.
I think you said that.
Contracts of care.
Contracts of care.
Wellbeing days. Paid
wellbeing days.
Yes.
And
not just in like mental health month or mental health week, or
just as a
standard.
As a standard, even if it's once a quarter, like.
Yeah, I'm taking my mental health day. Bye.
Cheers.
I want the expulsion of surveillance culture to be gone.
I mean, with kind of mental health days, I sometimes find that there's enough of a cultural challenge for getting team members to take toil or annual leave. Like the kind of the culture of just like working and grinding is just so hard to shake. Taking sick leave, just like, you know, still to this day we'll have conversations with team members where they are really sick and they say, I'm just going to work from home. It's like, no. I
don't care. I'll take sick leave anytime. Even as a preventative measure. If I feel a burnout coming on, I'm taking that sick leave. Okay, guys. I think that was really beautiful. Thank you all so much for your contributions. And just thinking about like flexible working times, we've all got places to be. So
thank you for being a wonderful host.
Thank you for being wonderful contributions. And thank you to all of you who are listening and for being part of Radical Listening Week 2025. A big thanks to our guests, Romanah, Hassan and John, and myself. And if something resonated with you or made you think, keep going, share it, talk about it, and most of all, challenge it. We're building this charter for equity together, and we all need to stand together for this. So no working for free or grinding. There's more to come, so catch the other episodes in this series and keep reflecting with us through Culture Central channels. See you there.